Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and welcome to another episode of Media Matters for Anfield Index. Liverpool dish out more capital punishment, don't they, people? The Spurs got 6, West Ham now get 5, and the rest of the league, they're 8 points or more behind, aren't they? Liverpool have got daylight at the top of the table. It's nearly, very, very nearly perfect on all fronts. But there's many things to talk about on and off the field. And I am delighted. Been a while, but to be by and respected, the Daily Mail's and Brown Barry aficionado, Lewis Steele. Lewis, how are we?
I'm good, mate. Thank you for that nice introduction. Enjoying the Christmas, New Year sort of period. But I've actually been working very hard, as you can imagine, so not got much chance to rest yet. But hopefully, with another game, not for another week, I can put my feet up for a bit and annoy Brand Barry on Twitter.
Indeed. Plenty of time for that. Yeah, it'll be United before you know it. But people, before we start talking about United, we have got to talk about yesterday. I mean, let's be honest, Lewis, we've talked about slow starts with Liverpool. That's been kind of the only downside, the only punctuation. This wasn't a slow start. This was an absolute on it from the off and a West Ham battering, wasn't it?
It was. I've got used to these slow starts, or maybe even poor first halves overall this season. You know, I've spent many a time in the media room at Anfield talking about, oh, that's not been very good, has it? While I've been getting my halftime cakes and pies and whatever with the other lads from the media. And then only for them to just click something at halftime and just go and win 3-0. But yesterday was like the opposite, really. I think West Ham only had like that one chance in the first few minutes when I think Paquetá fell over. Obviously, if that went in, it would have been completely different, but it didn't. And then West Ham were, I mean, you have to caveat it by saying West Ham were absolutely awful. But this was just blistering from Liverpool. I thought it was 5-0, but it could have easily been 6, 7, 8, 9 even. That's how lethal they were. They were just creating chances at will. You know, Areola, the keeper, had to bail West Ham out a few times, like in both halves. I mean, he was probably poor for a couple of the goals, but overall, I thought he actually played well considering he conceded 5. Salah had a few big chances that he missed as well. But this was just like, it felt like Liverpool weren't even trying. It was like they were playing in slow motion. They were just clicking the fingers, and all of a sudden they were through on goal again. So yeah, just an absolute phenomenal performance again. Goal scoring at will. First clean sheet for a few weeks, which is good. And with Ruben Amorim's United up next, it could be another 5 next week. Looking at, you know, I've watched their last few games on the telly or Match of the Day or whatever, and they are a mess in defence. So obviously, with it being a rivalry, it all changes. But I'd be, if I was a United fan, I'd be very worried going into that game next Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. Just absolutely battered them. It was a contest. Maybe a combo of West Ham just being so bad and us so brilliant, but there was so much to like. And there is one player we've got to start with, because Mo Salah, I mean, we're probably not even going to actually do justice to his performance and his recent form. But I know it was an article you've done this morning as well at the same time, that literally Mo Salah is the best player in the world right now, isn't he? It's almost near impossible to debate.
Yeah, I genuinely can't think of anyone that even runs him close. And as a journalist, I always try to be very unbiased or very neutral in all of my opinions. But you look through the Premier League, there's certainly not a single player who runs him close, definitely not a forward. You look across Europe, I mean, I don't watch La Liga every week, but there's no one that runs him close. His goals, as I say in that piece and that tweet there, his goal and assists have already matched Vinicius for last season. Now, obviously, I I didn't think Vinicius was the best player in the world last season, but he certainly did, and most of the world seemed to think so. Obviously, Rodri won the Ballon d'Or, but the fact that Salah's already matched the tally of someone who was the favourite for the Ballon d'Or last season, that statistic can't be understated for me. And we're not even into the new year yet. If Salah stays fit and on this form, he could absolutely wipe the floor with the goal tally, the assist tally. He'll win the Golden Boot in the Prem unless Haaland starts banging in the hat tricks again. And I think that we've got to be in the conversation for the Ballon d'Or next year. I know it's very early days; we're not even in 2025 yet, but he is the best player in the world on current form, and it feels like he's getting better as well for me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you yesterday. I mean, we've seen some unbelievable performances from Salah already this season, but yesterday, I mean, the goal, people will argue Areola could have done better. Did the assist for Jota just put to bed all those Hazard's a better dribbler, Hazard creates miss, Mo Salah's pace and dribbling ability? Like, he literally just answered everything in kind of one dribble from his own half, didn't he?
Well, yeah, I mean, Hazard was a very good player, but he did it for what, 2 or 3 seasons max, whereas Salah's now hit 20 goals for 8 seasons in a row. So if there's any debate about Hazard or Salah, then that is just absolutely ridiculous for me. As I say, good player, but not got the longevity. And I was doing my player ratings as I do for every game, and I was sort of about 10, 15 minutes to go. I was like, I don't know who to give man of the match to here, because there was really good performances across the board. Diaz, Gakpo, McAllister, Curtis Jones, pretty much everyone, really. I mean, it was hard to give the defenders a good mark because they had absolutely nothing to do. But as soon as Salah just picked up that ball on the halfway line and dribbled through, I was like, yeah, there we go. That gives him my 9 out of 10 for today. Very rarely go above 9 out of 10 because I like to think that he can even get better. But yeah, absolutely majestic assist. The first one for Gakpo as well, some might say there was a little bit of luck involved in that, how it sort of just bounced into the path of Cody Gakpo, but that was lovely as well. And he's just all-round game is just absolutely phenomenal at the moment. His goal scoring, his assists, his work rate off the ball. It is a joy to watch. And, you know, he's 32, but on this form, I think he could play for another 5 years at this well, maybe not this level, but certainly at the top level.
Yeah, just absolutely unbelievable. And it's interesting you mentioned them, because the defenders, it probably was one of their easier afternoons. I can't remember Allister being troubled too often, bar the odd kudos sort of flyer from distance that rattled the work. Virgil van Dijk, though, I mean, again in this, absolutely brilliant. There was even one bit you could tell he was bored playing centre-back, so him and Diaz switched roles and he took it inside and had a shot, didn't he, as well? He's just absolutely peerless.
Yeah, he's brilliant. And him and Salah, really. When I do my player ratings, I'm always like, well, what do I say about them? Because they just do the same every week. They're just so good every week. I can't remember Van Dijk making a mistake all season. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but he coasts through games. It's like he's not even trying. And we talk about Salah being the best player in the world. I mean, Van Dijk is up there as well, isn't he? Like, there isn't a defender out there that's better than him. I know Arsenal fans will probably say Saliba or Gabriel, but what Van Dijk brings to this team is just it's like the main thing for me is just the calmness he has. Like, and I think that radiates across the pitch. Like, if Liverpool are 1-0 down or a 0-0 at half time, it's like no one panics. And I think that all comes from Van Dijk and what he's potentially saying at half time or on the pitch as well. Just brilliant. Like, those two players have just been by far the best two in the Premier League for me over the course of this season. And there's plenty more as well that don't get the headlines. Like, I think McAllister's been brilliant. Obviously, the other forwards are now chipping in with more goals in the last few weeks, which is good. But it's just every player seems to have just gone up a level under Arne Slot this season, and they're all playing with confidence, and they're all seeming to get better. We keep saying a blip will come, and I'm sure there will be a little rocky run. Maybe they'll lose one or they'll draw a few in a row. But even so, the foundations they've got now, I think that they're going to run away with this title. I think I don't want to jinx it for Liverpool fans, but I think they're just going to run away with this title.
We've touched wood when we've said that, but let's not lie, we're not all pretending the exact same or hoping the exact same, people, as well. And it is interesting because you think about yesterday, there are so many good performances. And I know you mentioned this player there and in your player ratings as well, Lewis, Alexis Mac Allister. Does Alexis Mac Allister, in the weirdest way, almost refreshed and revitalized, almost had this, it's like an enforced mini pre-season break, isn't it, right in the middle because of suspensions and postponements, the way it's fallen. But however it's fallen, he's looked class again the last few games, hasn't he?
Yeah, I remember doing a piece about 4 months ago where we were talking about the elite players at each Premier League club. And I think everyone would say like the Salah, Van Dijk, Trent, Alisson fall into that category, definitely. Yeah. And I was thinking like Mac Allister probably does now because he's sort of just that good. He's like, there's not many midfielders in the world that are like him in terms of what he gives on the ball and off the ball together. I think he's like one of those, what's the phrase, like master of all trades, jack of all trades, master of none sort of thing. He's not, whatever it is. He's not, getting loads of assists or goals. He's not like holding the midfield up like a Rodri or someone like that. But he's doing an 8 out of 10 in every single little role. And I think he's perfect for Liverpool. I mean, what was it, 35 million for him 18 months ago? It's an absolute steal. When you look at the fees that have happened in the last 2 or 3 years across the board in the Premier League. Just absolute phenomenal footballer. And I definitely agree that break has done him well. I think maybe Gravenberch could do with a week off, so put his feet up when they play Accrington in the Cup. He doesn't need to be anywhere near Anfield that day. But yeah, just absolutely phenomenal from Mac Allister. And I think this week he'll do them all good because it's rare that Liverpool don't play a midweek game. So to have 7-day rest is going to do them all good. I presume they'll have a few days off and just sort of recharge the batteries, see the family because it's been a busy Christmas period, and that's going to just give them an extra spring in their step come next Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. It does seem the near perfect sort of prep for it. And the final bit for the on-the-field stuff, and we do want to keep it on the field for this specifically, Trent, because naturally we're going to talk about the other stuff that goes on around that. But just his performance yesterday, I know the goal was deflected, but he did play well yesterday, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. He's excellent, Trent, every week. And my boss is a West Ham fan, actually, season ticket holder, and I was sort of texting with him during the game, and he said, obviously Liverpool fans watch Trent every week, but other fans don't. And he said Trent is just an absolute superstar, isn't he? Like, I only watch him live maybe once a season, but every time he just surprises me just how good he is and how technically good he is. And I always think like the barometer of a good player is if you've got the opposition fans saying how good he is, then that says something. So that was quite interesting for a West Ham fan to say, like, this is just phenomenal. And he just makes it look easy, like I said, with Salah and Van Dijk, just those balls he plays down there. Like, you'll see Salah start running when Trent's halfway in his own half, and you think, well, that ball's on. Whereas if 90% of other fullbacks, you'd think, all right, well, that's not possible to play that ball. The switches, the crosses, and a few of them do end up in the stands every game, don't they? But he's trying the Hollywood pass every game, and I don't think there is a passer like him in the Premier League. Obviously, De Bruyne, but he's fallen off a cliff. I don't know, Chelsea or Arsenal don't have anyone like that. So I think Trent is just brilliant, yeah.
And goals and assists back on that trail in the league as well, which is absolutely brilliant. There was so much to like about yesterday. And as we punctuated it at the start, it was near perfect. However, it's naturally the off the field stuff or post-match stuff, which we want to ask you about, Lewis, because I know you were in the mix zone, you were at the interviews as well. So probably the first place to start is Mo Salah and his comments afterwards. So just in case anyone missed this, we're just going to play you the small clip, which you've probably heard about 8,000 times on socials, but just to make sure we're all on the same page.
Ready for the contract question? I know you're not going to stand here and tell us, but are you hoping to be able to give some good news soon?
No, we are far away from that. But again, I don't want to put something in the media and people start saying stuff, but nothing really move on. But I'm focused with the team. Hopefully we win the Premier League.
Well, thank you for answering that. You're the player.
So, yeah, I mean, on the field, absolutely perfect. What no one wanted to hear, Lewis, we're not further along with that because obviously everyone's waiting for a sign-in, everything like that. From your interactions and from what you're hearing, is there any concern about Mo Salah and his long-term future at Liverpool? Or are you personally expecting this is just almost part of the dance and it will get done eventually?
Yeah, I think it will get done. I don't want to put my neck on the line too much, but I would say I don't think it's close, but these things aren't as easy as a lot of the fans seem to think they are, and don't want to rub any fans up the wrong way by saying that, but I think a little bit of patience is required, and obviously they've needed a lot of patience because realistically this should have been sorted out months ago.
Yeah.
But Salah, I would be very surprised if he is not at Liverpool this time next year. He has said enough times that he wants to stay. It's very obvious that Liverpool want him to stay, from what I hear as well. And Richard Hughes, although we don't really see much from him or hear much from him, from what I hear, Richard Hughes is working very hard behind the scenes, working tirelessly over the Christmas period and into the new year to get these deals wrapped up and, get the best possible deal for the club and player. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about the money, but it's not just the money, it's the bonuses. And I think the big one with Salah is the length of the contract, because if he only gets offered a year, he's basically just kicking the can down the road, and we'll be sat here in a year talking about contracts every single second of the day yet again. So I think Salah will want maybe a slightly longer contract because that just future-proofs him a bit more.
Yeah.
Whether Liverpool want to offer a longer contract, because he is 32, and I know I said earlier he's not slowing down, but the science suggests that he should be slowing down, but obviously Salah is defying that at the moment. But I think that the discussions are ongoing, they're happening quite frequently, and we'll just have to see what happens now, because this is obviously a once-in-a-lifetime player, and I think he loves the club. He's made that clear. The interview yesterday was a bit bizarre, but I always think the people who ask the questions almost seem to answer them for themselves, if that makes sense. They always say, I know you're not going to give us the answer, but well, maybe if you say what is the answer, then it sort of, not saying you should try and trip them up, but don't say you don't have to answer this if you don't want. Just let them say that. But anyway, let's see what happens with Salah. But discussions are ongoing. I think just a little bit more patience, and hopefully for all parties it'll get sorted before too long.
And to be fair to Mo, he did say quite clearly he didn't want to create headlines. It was just about on the pitch. And as he also said, it's about for him winning the Premier League title. So, yeah, nothing to read too much into that one. And then the other thing that, as you know, did blow up social media, and I know it'll be in your sort of stories or mentions for a while, the Trent celebration. So rather than actually just play the Trent celebration, let's have a little listen to what Arne Slot said when asked about this after the game.
Is Trent the biggest worry? Sorry to ask a second one, but with the other two, it just feels a bit more positive. We saw Trent's celebration today. The mood music around him feels a bit more negative.
No, I don't think it's negative at all. He's playing really well, scored a great goal, and the way he celebrated his goal probably tells you enough. So I don't think I have to say much more about it. I'm really happy with Trent, just as happy as I am with Mo and with Virgil. So for me, there's no difference. For the outside world, maybe there's a bit more things happening around Trent in the media than with the other two. But yeah, I'm happy with all three of them at the moment.
So Arne Slot's not concerned with us in the outside world. And to be fair, Arne Slot doesn't need to be concerned about articles in Marca and all the speculation, etc. that way. But it is interesting, isn't it, Lewis, that considering a lot of the fan base, and understandably with these ticking down, especially around Trent and all the noise around Real, there is that concern. Arne Slot, especially though, when Liverpool, they just seem uber relaxed over this whole Trent situation, don't they?
Yeah, I feel sorry for Slot really, because he's the one that has to answer these questions every week. Obviously, he will be asked, and you can't blame anyone for asking, and I ask him as well about them. But there's not much he can say because they're an ongoing discussion. And until a deal has been reached, there's not much he can say. Obviously, these are three of the best players in the world. He'd be a fool to not want them to all stay. So obviously he wants them all to stay. Obviously the noise around Trent is a bit different to the other two. That is because Real Madrid are ramping it up themselves. I think everything, all the noise from this is not coming from Liverpool, it's coming from Madrid. And they believe that they are confident that they can tempt him to join them. But that is part of a game that Real Madrid have played many times before. Real Madrid are obviously one of the biggest clubs in the world, and you know most players would dream of playing for them. But Trent, his boyhood club is Liverpool. At the end of the day, he loves Liverpool.
Yeah.
Well, I think he does. He's just got a massive decision to make himself. Really, I think it all depends on him. Real Madrid fancy their chances, but that doesn't mean that much in the grand scheme of things, because at the end of the day, it all rests on what Trent decides to do. There's offers on the table from Liverpool, and from, the day after tomorrow, Real Madrid can make their official offers as well, whether they want to or not. But I think it is significant that that story was in the Spanish press this weekend, because Marca basically have a direct line to Florentino Perez, and he will have, I'm not saying he rang them up and said, do this as your front page, but I wouldn't be too surprised if the conversation went something along those lines. But it's a tricky one, the Trent one, because that one does seem like the one where it all rests on the player, whether he does get wowed by Real Madrid, and whether or not he decides to stay at his boyhood club and become a proper legend. I think he already is a legend because he's won the Prem and the Champions League as the Scouser in the team, whatever. But if he stayed until he was 33, then he would go down in the long list of legends at this club and be fairly near the top.
Yeah, no doubts about it at all. And I suppose that on that, because people have taken their own interpretations. I've seen a few doing that was shutting up the Marca rumours. I've seen a few claiming, well, that's Jude Bellingham's celebration, so jumping on that. Have you just taken it almost as a, let's just wait and see? It's just Trent almost saying it's all noise and he's not interested in it.
Yeah, I think it was a bit more like, I'm blocking out the noise. I'm not bothered by what people have to say. He doesn't want this played out in public, which, he's not done many media interviews this season, which is obvious because he knows that everyone will just jump on him. All the media are like hungry sharks trying to get the scoop on his contract. But yeah. I don't know much about that celebration. I just thought it was, I'm not listening to all the noise. Real Madrid, I've spoken to a lot of people in Madrid this week, and then they are all confident that they can get in. But as I said a few minutes ago, that doesn't actually mean that much, because it all rests on what Trent wants to do. So it's going to be a very interesting month or so to see what happens next, because once Real Madrid start playing these games, I think I wouldn't be surprised if another front page or two comes out in the next week or so.
Yeah, and just see, hopefully everyone doesn't react to it. What will be a little bit, and we'll see what unfolds in January. And speaking of January, the final clip I wanted to play you was from, I know you were there, the post-match reaction, the post-match interview that Arne Slot did. So he did get, rather than saying he got asked about January, he kind of instigated this conversation, which I enjoyed, actually. So let's have a little listen to this one.
And Virgil, what you guys were talking about, and I assume, don't let me down, please, that people now are going to talk about every player we're going to bring in the upcoming month, and which other player is going to leave. So I get some other questions as well, and not only about these three. Are you going to bring in? There's nothing in the media yet about who we're going to bring in. No. And also not in my mind, where I'm very happy with the squad we have. I said this 6 months ago, and everybody asked, is this guy crazy? But I think the players showed that the confidence the club and me as well had in them was well deserved. If you look at Gerard Kwanzaa today, he hasn't played a lot till now, few appearances, and the way he played today shows also how important that is, that we keep working with these players, because we're going to need all of them.
Yeah, funny how everyone's loved Arne Slot's press conferences, and I know you've been in pretty much all of them so far. And the way he kind of almost turns it back round sometimes at journalists. But with this bit specifically, Lewis, I mean, he talks about almost jokingly how happy he is with this squad, and like anyone else who, has thought him a crazy guy for saying that. It's with the way things are, and obviously maybe we'll talk about as well shortly, the Gomez hamstring strain, which we hope isn't too bad. Essentially, it seems really difficult to see any, if minimal, movement in January, doesn't it?
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any movement in January. Liverpool have been known to surprise people in that regard in Januaries in the last few years. I think it's the same as what I probably said in the last couple of weeks of the summer window, where if an opportunity arises, they will do it. But I don't know what opportunities will arise. If I woke up one morning and Martin Zubimendi had signed for the club, I would be surprised, but I wouldn't think it was an April Fool's joke, because they can just like spring one upon you sometimes. I do think they do need another body in midfield, just because, well, actually, people do seem to always say that Endo isn't suited to Slot's system, but when I've seen him play, he's not really done that much wrong. He's running around and making a nuisance of himself. But you do think if there's one position where they would be struggling, if they say McAllister or Gravenberch got a 2-month injury, it would be that midfield position. But then you've got Curtis Jones, who can play in there as well. He's normally played in the number 10 this season, but he can also drop into that deeper role as well. So I am anticipating a quiet January in terms of incomings, which I know is not what the fans want to hear. But you have to say, when Slot kept saying how good his team was in the summer, he was bang on. So let's see what happens. But I don't really expect too much movement this window. Maybe there'll be a couple of loans outgoing, but not for anyone that's anywhere near the first team.
No, and you understand it a bit, not too much. And a lot of fans, understandably, will be thinking left back, like you said, another body in midfield would be immense. It doesn't look like Zubimendi's going to go anywhere. So you never know. It's the old opportunistic one, but it just seems really hard to see anything. And the final kind of bit around the off the field bit, because we called it nearly perfect. Joe Gomez, I know you managed to grab a quick word with him going through the mix zone. I mean, Slot said it's never good when a player has to come off. we've just got to pray it's a good scan result, haven't we, really, for Joe Gomez?
Yeah, so Gomez had a little bit of a limp as he walked out of the stadium. Basically just said, how are you, Joe? And he said, yeah, I'm well, he was in good spirits. He said it's his hamstring. He wasn't sure how bad it was, but he was hopeful it wasn't too bad. But as I say, he was smiling. He was, wishing us a happy new year and safe travels back and all that. He's a very, very nice chap, is Joe Gomez. So that is a big blow for Liverpool. I wouldn't expect him to be fit for the next few weeks, but that all depends on the scan results. Not expecting any news on that today. I think that might be one for tomorrow or later in the week, because they like to maybe let it settle a bit before they do the scans. But obviously you've got Ibrahima Konate, who is not too far away from a recovery. I think the word that I was told is that they were hopeful that he can be back for next Sunday, but I do think that might be a bit of a stretch, to be honest. He's not any training. I think it would be a bit much to just throw someone in from the start against Man United, as bad as they are, who's not played for a month. So I do think it'll be Kwanzaa starting on Sunday. And to be fair to Kwanzaa, he was excellent last season. He's had a bit of a rough time this season, but he deserves his chance. I think he's not kicked up a fuss. He's waited patiently, so I think he deserves a chance to prove some people in the fan base wrong, because he was outstanding last season. And then Chiesa, I think it's been very frustrating for everyone that so far this season. I think what Slot said was he just basically wanted him to train rather than just come all the way down to West Ham and not get off the bench. Although saying that, when it was 4 or 5-0, I would have probably thrown him on and got 20 minutes into his legs. But that's just how it works sometimes. There's not been many times this season where Liverpool have been far and away 4 or 5 up, really. But Chiesa, I think he's fine. I know he trained on Friday, so I don't think there's any setback. I think it was just they wanted to maybe get him playing a bit. Maybe he needs another game for the 21s, because he played an hour for them a few weeks ago and scored. And I think maybe he just needs another one of them, and then try and get an hour in him against Accrington in the Cup, I would say, and then let's see where he goes from there, because I think he's very frustrated with how it's gone. But bit of patience, and hopefully he'll maybe contribute a bit more in the second half of the season.
Fingers crossed. And as Avo Third's put there, Slot has shown he won't rush players back from injuries, managing the squad excellently. And similar with Jota as well, he showed he won't rush players back. He will manage it according to what the S&C guys say there. So it is interesting. And the final one I wanted to sort of signpost you towards, Lewis, I mean, Christ, it'll be 2025 before we know it. There's a lot of games when you look at the schedule in January, and this is almost sounding like a real spoilt fan, but there's not a million of them that are almost high important, shall we say. I mean, everyone looks at the start of the month, United, the Carabao, the FA Cup. I mean, there's some tough away league games, but even with the 2 Champions League ones there, that feels a little bit like a dead rubber, because Liverpool are essentially through, aren't they? They've topped the Champions League group. So when you look at January, as much as there's quite a few games, are you expecting this could work quite well for Liverpool in terms of rotation and the options and being able to actually rest big names on quite a few occasions?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, I think he'll go full strength for them first 2, and then he can make 11 changes for that Accrington game. And then get them back fresh for Forest, which is not... I have to say, Forest away looks the hardest of all them ones in front of me right now, because they're excellent. I've got my best mate, my housemate at uni, is a big Forest fan, and he's having the time of his life at the moment. And obviously, as we know, they're the only team to have beaten Liverpool this season. And Slot seems to have PTSD from that, because he mentions it every week. But yeah, as you say, the 2 Champions League games is probably a chance to just get a few fringe players minutes into the legs. Brentford away as well, not easy actually. They've got a good home record. But I think the main goal is to just keep on top of the table for the end of Jan. Try and get some minutes into the legs in the Champions League, and then set up that Spurs clash. You know, Spurs are awful, but just basically get it back so you can beat them at Anfield and get to the final. I'm sure they'll be really up for that because they've not won a trophy in however many years it is, 15 or so, is it? So Spurs will be up for that game. So even a draw is not the end of the world there. Get them back to the second leg at Anfield, and they'll win that. So it's a big month though. Every month's big, but there's a lot of games in there. I mean, I've got to go to all of them, so I don't know when I'm going to have a few days off.
Yeah, and enjoy it now because it doesn't look like you'll get any in January. And it, in a good way for us, and again, it might be sounding greedy, it does give the chance for you, say, like the fringe players rotation. And there's certain games, as you mentioned, the likes of Gravenberch, Salah, VVD, the big hitters, they don't need to be anywhere near Accrington. You might even give them off dependent on how you look at it. The Tottenham game, the Carabao, and the Champions League even. So, yeah, there's plenty of options there for Arne Slot. So we will see what the new year brings. But there we are, people. Liverpool are top of the league. They're 8 points clear. They are top of the Champions League. It has been a near-on perfect end to 2024. Let's just hope there's some good news on Joe Gomez. Let's see what they and is he available for when we play them right at the start of the year. All it leaves me to say for this one, though, most importantly, is Lewis, for the time, the insight, it is much appreciated.
Thank you very much for having me on, mate, and Happy New Year to all the viewers.
Indeed. And ladies and gents, for the final time in 2024, that was another Media